Speaking of Supreme Court nominees, I guess in this case of successful Supreme Court nominees, unlike Merrick Garland, who was an unsuccessful Supreme Court nominee, Justice Thomas is the last tough guy left in America, the last guy with really rock-ribbed moral vision. Honorable mentions to Alito here, and I suppose even Gorsuch, even though I still haven't forgiven Gorsuch for that transgender decision. The Supreme Court was asked to hear a case, the final case of the 2020 election, regarding mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. There were lots of questions about mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania because, probably most importantly, the Supreme Court, the Constitution of Pennsylvania prohibits the use of these widespread mail-in ballots that we saw in the 2020 election. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, in a very politically motivated decision, just chose to ignore that part of the Constitution. The U.S. Supreme Court didn't want to hear about it. Then there was this issue of mail-in ballots coming in after Election Day, whether or not those can be counted. Supreme Court actually was sort of willing to weigh in on that, but now they're not willing to hear the case regarding the validity of these ballots. Sadly, you got all the libs voting not to hear the case. You also have John Roberts, but I guess I repeat myself. You also have Amy Barrett, voted not to hear this case. You also have Brett Kavanaugh, voted not to hear this case. We fought real hard to get Brett Kavanaugh that seat. We fought real hard to send Merrick Garland into political irrelevance, at least for a few years. And they went squishy. They went squishy on what should be a very simple answer. Now, Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch did think that the court should weigh in on this matter. Thomas most vigorously. So Thomas, in his dissent, said something very important. And it's important for not just this election, because the court, generally speaking, they did say, we don't think that these votes would have changed the results of the 2020 election. However, they could have very serious impact in the future. And so we need to take a look at them. Thomas said something here that I have been saying since the 2020 election. Actually, I have argued with many conservatives on this point since the 2020 election. And Thomas, you know how much I hate to say I told you so, Thomas seems to be on my side of this question. Thomas wrote, and actually a little footnote in the case, he says, "We are fortunate that many of the cases we have seen alleged only improper rule changes, not fraud. But that observation provides only small comfort. An election free from strong evidence of systemic fraud is not alone sufficient for election confidence. Also important is the assurance that fraud will not go undetected." This line, I want you to highlight this line. I don't know how you're going to highlight it in the air as you're listening to this in a podcast, on the radio, or on YouTube, but make note of this line. An election free from strong evidence of systemic fraud is not alone sufficient for election confidence. When some of my friends on the right, in the days after the 2020 election, were demanding, they said, we need the evidence, we need the evidence, we need the evidence. I agreed with them. I said, yeah, the Trump team obviously needs to make the case in court, and they're not going to be able to make the case if they don't have evidence. However, this election looks pretty crooked to me, folks. It seems like there was a lot of irregularity going on. And what some of my friends, even on the right, would say is, if you can't provide all of the evidence, then we must conclude that the election was totally fine and there were no questions and it was absolutely legit. And I said, no, that's not true. You don't get to, in the weeks and months before the election, change practically all the rules, all of the important rules surrounding election integrity. You don't get to violate the state constitution, for goodness sakes, in Pennsylvania to give an advantage to Democrats. You don't get to extend Election Day into election month, thereby diminishing election integrity and making it more vulnerable to fraud. You don't get to extend the counting of the ballots. You don't get to do all these things that cut at the heart of election integrity and then tell me the burden is entirely on me to prove that there was some shenanigans going on. I'm seeing what you're doing. You're taking away all of the safeguards. Therefore, it is absolutely my right to raise questions. It is absolutely my right to not have much confidence in this electoral process. That's what Thomas is saying right here. Justice Thomas the man left on the Supreme Court. I like some of the other guys too, depending on the day, especially Alito. But Thomas is one of the most clear-eyed conservatives in the entire country. He's making exactly the same point. And I don't think that there is anything illegitimate or wrong or shameful about pointing out that when you get rid of a lot of the election integrity measures, people are going to lose some confidence in the election. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Michael Knowles Show. To check out the full episode, hit the link in the description or download the Michael Knowles Show wherever you listen to podcasts.